And welcome to another episode of the Richmond BigFooty Tigercast, off yet another win. So we're looking alright at the moment, which is really good against the Giants, who are always a tough opponent no matter what. But we're now sitting fifth on the ladder and making a real charge to try and claim fourth spot. Tonight I'm joined by a guest with his first time on the show, RT. Welcome to the show.
G'day, how you going?
Good, yourself?
Not too bad.
That's the way. And like we do with all new guests on the show, how did you become a Richmond supporter?
Family. The mum and my auntie, they were heavily involved back in the late 70s. And we used to tag along all the time, cheer squad, the works. So, 40-odd years, following the Tigers through all the ups and downs, and more downs than ups, but it's going well at the moment.
It is going well. Speaking of the ups, obviously the grand final in 2017, what's your favourite memories of that day, and were you at the game?
Yeah, we were sitting 2 bays from the interchange bench on the lower level, so pretty much right on the 50-metre line. So pretty much when the siren went busty and that were right in front of us. And just, the best thing, it was my mum, my son, myself, just being there and witnessing it in person was, just one of the greatest things ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And fingers crossed we can all be there again this year. So
yes.
It's interesting when I'm sure you would have seen all these comparison stats about our sort of win-loss ratio and percentage from the same time this year compared to 17. It's quite freakish. Yeah,
it is. It is. Speaking of that, I kind of sort of think Geelong have actually done us from last year.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the overachieving, or they're peaking too early.
Yeah, I think they've gone too early, and they're setting themselves up for a little bit of a fall.
Speaking of the Cats, do you remember back in 17 when there was that side-by-side graph with a direct comparison between us and Geelong for when they won a flag, when they got Balm, then the VFL team won a flag?
Yep.
Okay, so that's been reposted again recently. I saw it today, and it actually shows that after their grand final, their first one, they then had a shock prelim loss, which is what we did, and then they won again the next year. So we're still kind of tracking on that same sort of path as what the Cats did, which I found really interesting.
No, just follow the path. That's all we need to do. Just keep following that path.
That's it. And the game on the weekend against the Giants, Richmond 13-16-94 defeated the Giants 9-13-67 by 27 points, putting us fifth on the ladder. What did you make of that game? In pretty bad conditions, but I thought we did okay, all things considered.
Yeah, I didn't get to go to the game itself. I had to watch a replay afterwards, but watching the game, I thought it was another step forwards in how we, how we come on from the Saints and the Suns. The few of the guys that have come back from injury have got that extra bit of run under them. Jack back gave the forward line a totally different setup and structure, and then the opposition just couldn't sit on Lynch. So, I think it was a step in the right direction, but still plenty of more work to do.
The Jack Rewalt comment's a really interesting one, and it was one that we made note of in the halftime podcast with Kocho, that there was a bit of play when the ball got kicked in long and Jack and Tom were in there in 2 one-on-one contests, and Phil Davis just shit himself practically and grabbed Lynch, and that's when he got that mark and goal on the line.
Yeah.
You're right, they can't peel off and they can't go third man up and kill the contest, because if you leave one, the other one's going to get it. So it's such a critical matchup for us, but it's going to cause people a lot of headaches for opposition.
Yeah, and there's not many sides in the comp that have 2 quality one-on-one defenders who can both play on a gun keeper position forward. And the thing is with Jack, he's smart enough that he can get up the ground once he gets a bit of fitness into him. He'll take his man up the ground and create even more space for Lynch. And then Lynch is starting to look like he's getting on his bike a bit more and covering a bit more ground as well. And they're going to create more and more headaches as they get that fitness and they get that chemistry going with each other as well.
Well, that's how they set up that first goal for Jack, wasn't it? Lynch led up to the kicker, grabbed the marked the ball, wheeled around, and and got it straight in. It's really funny because I suppose Lynch is a key forward. He knows how he would want it delivered to him really quickly from that mark, so he did the same thing to Jack and waltzed in and get his first goal back. And yeah, I think you're right. The flexibility we have is really good, and it also comes down to that not many other teams have two good enough defenders to be able to stay one-on-one as well. And I think on the flip side, that's where we're lucky that with Rance, when he's playing in Asprey, that we can still do that. West Coast are probably the other team with the two dominant power forwards, I'd say, in Darling and Kennedy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're in a pretty unique position, I think.
Yeah, no, like as you're saying, like West Coast is probably the only other team, and it's very rare that both of them get shut out of a game, for an extended period of time. And I think the other thing that helps us as well is Marbior coming in and having 4 or 5 years experience, I think it is, playing as a key forward at VFL level. He comes in and just gives us that third option as well, where if Jack or Tom's getting held, you've still got that extra third tall to then go to as well. And he's not like a big, slow, lumbering sort of guy. He gets on his bike as well. So, I just like the way that we're starting to structure up in the forward half.
And flipping to the other end of the field with the back line, I thought the game against the Giants was the first time our back line looked really settled again, like we'd seen in previous years. They're doing really well covering, obviously, the absence of Rance, but Grimes, Asprey, Vlosten, Broad, in that first half, the setup behind the ball was just exceptional, and I think that's what helped get us off to a good start.
Yeah, I really like those four as the taller options. I know, like, Vlosten's, he is, a smaller guy, but he does play a little bit taller, and he's not afraid to fly for his marks and, take the body contact and get in there and be that interceptor that Rance was being as well. And I think it's taken a little bit of time for him to adjust to that role, and also for Broad to, sort of slide across into what Vlosten's role was, and everyone's sort of adjusted it. And I think now that they've got it down pat, those four are a nice foundation to build around. And then we've got, the Hooley, Short, Edwards, Stack, even Ellis and McIntosh, they get back there and they give us that run and speed out of the back line that really complements the four stay-at-home guys.
Yeah, and those other names you mentioned, it's really handy to be able to have them just rotate through just whenever. It gives us so much more drive. I mean, Hawley had 30 disposals and went at 77%, so he's had a pretty good year, I reckon, and just the way he sets us up from the back half is good. But to know that we can chuck an Edwards or a Stack there as well is just a really good luxury to have.
Yeah, and it's the flexibility that gives us too. Shorty came back, so they flipped Stack up forwards, and he creates a headache up forwards. And if something wasn't going right later in the game, or during a game coming up, we can always go, okay, Stack, we can flip Stack back, we can move Short to a wing, we can, change things around on the fly. And I don't think we're as one-dimensional as we were.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good call. Speaking of Stack, how good was his first goal? Just taking the absolute piss, wasn't he? Just shooting, dancing in and out, and slots it.
I couldn't tell on the coverage whether it was overly wet at that time, but just the way he was handling the ball, it was like a very early season game when the weather's perfect, the ground's hard and everything, and he's just one grab, give it, get it, go, turn on a silver dime, and then just slot the goal. And I think that sort of got the crowd fired up a little bit because it was a miserable day, a little bit, like watching the game, I was like, well, this is just going to drag on for 2 hours. And after that, you sort of like, everyone got a little bit of a spark and the team sort of kicked into gear.
Yeah, agree. It set the tone for us.
They went from there. So, yeah, it was more than just a goal. It was just the way it got everything going.
The other player that made the conditions look really dry was Bolton, who had another really good game, 29 disposals at 76%, 8 contested possessions, 7 score involvements, 4 clearances and 6 tackles. I think he got a goal as well. Hasn't he just really stepped up in the last few games, getting more midfield time?
Yes. Shy has been one of the boys that I've watched quite regularly at VFL level, and then just the anticipation of him getting a tank to be able to get into the midfield. At VFL level, he was doing it the last sort of 18 months, playing through the midfield and just, treating games like, he was playing against little league kids. He was just doing things in VFL level that sort of made you stand up and go, "Whoa, this kid's got something." But when he got his opportunity at AFL level, he just, was plugged into playing as a small forward at the time, and now they've released him into the midfield. One touch, gets out of traffic. He's, Shane Edwards Mark II.
Yep, that's a good call. You're right, and having two players like that in your team who can give those quick releasing handballs to open a game up is so important to have.
Yeah, well, they get the ball fed out to them. They can then either break the game open by getting out of the traffic or, shoot that handball out to the outside runners and we're gone. And again, it's all about that flexibility that gives us that I don't think we had back in 17.
And he obviously got the Rising Star nomination this week, which is very well deserved.
Yes.
And if the final thing for him to do is to put pen to paper and sign an extension with us, and I had someone tweet me saying that he's going to, and that he kind of alluded to that he knew something that the rest of us didn't. But even the newspaper article, the interview done with him, he pretty much said that he's not homesick. He's out here with his girlfriend. He's obviously got the other WA boys here with him as well. So I think we've set up a really good support network to make sure we do secure him. The only thing is going to be that Ralph Carr's going to probably milk it for what it's worth, and he's good at what he does. Unfortunately for us, but fortunately for him and his clients. But I think all things are hopefully pointing to a Bolton signature.
Yeah, I'm kind of expecting it'll be, touch wood. Going back to the earlier thing about following Geelong, Dusty announced he's staying, just before the 2017 finals, and it'd be nice the week of the bye before the finals, and Shy comes out and goes, 3 years, I'm staying, just to give everyone that little bit of a kick along as well.
Yeah, agree. Kane Lambert, his importance to our side, I think, is starting to become a lot more evident now. Have you made his return the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, him coming in, I think has helped, relieve a little bit of the pressure on the Prestia was copping, and also it's just allowed Dusty to sort of as well just take a step back and not have to be that. That go-to guy all the time. It's not like they have to go through Dusty or nothing. It's, you can go to Kane and he just covers the ground up and down all day. He's, underrated by a lot of opposition, but, within our four walls, I think he's very, very highly rated.
And it's the goal sense as well. Like that, a goal he kicked on the boundary from that ruck contest, he just snapped it in wet conditions, and as soon as it left his boot, everyone knew it was going in. He's just got that ability to read the play exceptionally well. Yeah,
I think because he is so underrated, and even by opposition clubs, it allows him to get out into that space where he can hurt teams on the scoreboard. Is it 6 goals in the last 2 weeks? I think it is.
Yeah, he's on fire.
Yeah, so he's just sliding under the radar because there is so much big name talent that is ahead of him on the list.
And you mentioned him before, but I just want to give another shout out to Dion Prestia. I think he's had an outstanding month of football. In the first half, I just felt like he was everywhere. And I must admit, I was actually shocked to see he only had 24 disposals. But it kind of, that then makes sense because of how influential he was when he had the ball. He was doing a lot of good things when he had it.
Yeah. Prestia was, one of the ones back when he first came, and everyone was like, "Oh, we overpaid for him, and he's never going to be anything, and he's just going to be a run of the mill player." And we overpaid. But when he arrived, he was under a bit of an injury niggle. Wasn't able to train as hard as what he should, and he's had that big solid trading block, uninterrupted pre-season, and we're reaping the rewards for it now. He's another like Lambert. He just covers the ground up and down all day. Doesn't stop. Takes a battering, gives out a battering as well, and he gets the ball going our way, and he's smart in how he runs. And I think he's slipped into the Sean Grigg role of a few years ago, where he was just that link-up midfielder that helped the Stars do what they do.
Yeah, because you can't guard them all, can you? Like someone like him's going to get off the chain, and before if you're catching opposition off guard, putting him in two minds, like do we go to press, do we not? Then someone else gets off the chain. So he's in a really good spot in the team, and he's playing his role exceptionally well. I know we had a lot of good things happen on the weekend against the Giants, but there were still two stats in particular that I reference a lot on the show and on the board as well. But the contested possessions, we got smashed by 25, and the clearances we lost by 9. Now the clearances, in wet conditions, it probably doesn't matter too much because the ball probably isn't going to be marked too often from a quick entry. But I still think the contested possessions, losing by 25, that's a big number. And it's actually surprising we won the game based on a pure stat perspective. Do we have to really start to address this quickly before we head into finals, assuming we make it?
I don't think we're like a contested ball side, if that makes sense. I think like it's been mentioned quite a few times over the last couple of years that with our contested ball, if we can sort of break even or not be too badly beaten, and we can create a lot of dirty possessions coming out of those contested situations, that enables us to get our rebound game and turnover game up and running. So I don't think we need to address it too drastically. I think that the loss of the likes of Jack Ross, who was helping win the footy early on when Koch was out and helped carry the load a little bit. I think over the next couple of years, over the next season, we'll probably see an improvement next year. But I think this year it's probably a little bit too late to address it too drastically. I think they'll just sort of tighten up a few areas around the contest to ensure that opposition aren't getting clean takeaways.
Yeah, I suppose that's the bigger issue, isn't it? It's the clean ones. If it's scrappy, it's not too bad. But we don't want clean, quick entries inside our defensive 50.
No. I think the clean entries, the likes where I think the Geelong game was the one where they were just getting clean entries all game.
Yeah.
And that just tore us apart. But when you got sides where they're struggling to get that clean takeaway from a contest, and don't have that time and space to then hit up the leading forwards or an unmarked teammate down the field, I think that's what creates our ability to get that ball back in our defensive 50 and then hurt them on the rebound because they're all streaming one direction and then suddenly they've got to turn around and go back the other way.
Speaking of streaming the other way, I tweeted a bit of footage and it was put up on our board. The goal that Castagna got. When the ball was kicked inside, I suppose, the defensive 50, both Stack and Castagna were pretty much neck and neck. And then as soon as that ball was turned over on the outer side, to see the work rate of those two players sprinting all the way to the other end of the ground, Stack ended up at the top of the goal square. Castagna obviously marked the ball, played on and maybe shouldn't have played on, but still kicked the goal. I just find it fascinating the amount of trust that our players have in one another, that they will win the contest and they will get that link of possessions right to then be in that right spot to capitalise. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it looks good when it works. It looks horrible when it doesn't, though. There was times, I think it was Collingwood round 2, where we were getting the turnover and our blokes were taking off. Sorry, Michael's just taking off and heading down the field, and then we would turn it over on the wing, and all our blokes were getting caught out of position. So it's there is a lot of trust that's involved in them taking off, and I think when you've got dangerous players like Stack, like Rioli, like Castagna, where they take off, it does make their opponent run with them. So we don't get caught over as badly if we do turn it over. Yeah,
I suppose it's just that the old high risk, high reward scenario that we sort of live and die by the looks of it. But like you said, the fact that opposition defenders are pretty much forced to follow our runners means that they haven't got too many loose numbers behind the ball. And I think that's just gives even more credit to our defence for coping with those kind of situations where we do turn it over. We still don't really concede a lot of goals. We always manage to harbour contest and cause a ball up. So it's high risk, but I think they've got a lot of trust in our back six as well.
Yeah, I think that comes back to them having, it's been mentioned a lot of times that they're a structure-based and a setup-based team. So like our back six or the back four, the Asprey, Grimes, Vlosten and Broad, they sort of have that discipline that, they get the ball, we create the turnover and everyone takes off, but they don't just run off in like headless chooks and take off down the field as well. They sort of hang back a little bit and still make sure that structure behind the ball is there. So if there is a turnover, it's not going to come back and go over their heads. Yep. We've got that safety net there as well.
Yeah, no, you're spot on there. A huge game coming up this week against Port Adelaide, who come off a big loss against the Lions. That was fascinating to watch that first quarter. Before we get into the game, I wasn't aware of this stat until I sort of caught wind of it. Then I thought I'll look into it a bit further. But since 1997, we've only played them at the MCG 5 times. I find that staggering. So there was 97, 98, 07, 2012 and 2016 is the last time, and compared to 21 times in Adelaide.
Yes.
I don't know how that works. Surely, to me, logically, it just seems like you would do one here, one there, one here, one there. But to have it that lopsided that's quite remarkable.
Yeah, it was a bugbear of mine, a decade ago. How come every year we're drawn to play Port in Adelaide? They're never drawn to play us at our home ground. If they did come here, we had to play them at Marvel.
Yeah.
We never got them on our deck. And then it seemed like every time we did get them on our deck, it just never went right for us.
Well, we were shit at the time, and it didn't matter if we we played.
The one that hurt, I think, the most is I'm pretty sure it was Richo's 250th, and they came over and the Corns brothers just had their way with us. And, Richo, I think. I'm fairly sure it was his 250th, and it just ended up as a demoralising loss sort of thing, and everyone sort of traipsed off and kicked the cat, saying, how could we do that to Richo? But we got our revenge, I suppose, when we ruined Corns' retirement. So
yeah, true. And obviously we played him earlier on this year and beat him with our VFL team essentially, and that's not even exaggerating. So many people were out, it wasn't funny, and that win almost set up our season in a weird way, kept us alive and kept that belief instilled in the playing group and the supporters, didn't it? Yeah,
it did, and it just showed that. I think it showed the playing group that the structure and the setups that we have are good enough and it's strong enough to cope, regardless of who's missing, as long as everyone plays their role. And I've sort of mentioned that often on the board itself, that the guy, the role players that we have are so important to our overall success. It's all well and good having the big four in Koch and Dusty and Jack and Rance but without the good role players there to play their roles, it's not going to work.
And did you happen to watch the Port and Brisbane game, or catch even just the first bit of it after the media story?
No. I've seen the highlights. I sort of flicked out because I was watching the replay of our game and I flicked over their game and just finished. And I was just watching the interview with Lachie Neale, and they showed the highlights of them going after him early on in the game.
Yeah, it's an interesting tactic. Yeah, they went pretty hard at him early, and Ken Hinkley literally said that's what they were going to do in a on the ground interview with Fox. But it was interesting because the Lions flew the flag for Lachie, but they also just smashed him on the scoreboard, put 7 or 8 goals past him, and Port obviously did this against Melbourne as well to make score, so they've got a bit of form in that area, and I feel like they're a team that has bullied us around the contest in the past with their bigger bodies, so it's going to be interesting to see whether they try a similar tactic against Dusty, Koch or Prestia and get physical with him. Do you think they might have another crack at it, given that it backfired so badly last week?
I was actually thinking about this after seeing what they did to Lachie Neale, and I thought, Dusty against the Giants, sort of let their tagger get under his skin a little bit, and it put him off the game. But in saying that, we were in a bit of horrible form at that stage. Whereas I think this time around, I think they might try and rough up a couple of blokes, but I don't think it'll be like those three. I think it'll be the Lamberts, the Edwards, those role players that are the next level down that we need to play at a high enough level to complement our stars.
Yeah, even just as you were saying those names, even I thought Sydney Stack might cop some treatment as well, given the form he's in, try and put him off his game. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's something that, obviously he hasn't sort of had to deal with that sort of close attention. So, having one of their, more experienced defenders go to him and just, give him a bit of a nudge and, a bit of a, constant barrage, it might be something that sort of takes his focus off the game. And, Lambert's the same sort of thing, they get under his skin, knock him down all the time. You've seen with Max Gawn when they've done it to him. By the end of the game, he was nutted. He just couldn't go anymore because they'd just taken a physical toll on him. So, targeting a couple of our, next tier blokes and taking them out of the game might be a smarter way for them to attack the game rather than focusing on, because Cochin will just, they go at him, he'll just keep going at the ball. So Cochin, he won't really mind, and Presley is, the same sort of thing, and Dusty will just be Dusty,
Yeah.
But those, that, like I said, that next level down, if they target them, it could, sort of open us up a little bit, because then Cochin and Dusty and that they think, well, I've got to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
To fill the void, sort of thing. So
yeah, it's interesting. I think you're right. I reckon they might go down that path if they choose to, which be interesting to see how our guys respond, because they've just got to find that balance of not getting pushed around, but also keeping your mind on the game.
And I think the other thing too is, after we did, for lack of a better word, embarrass them on their deck with our VFL side, I just, with all the grief that Hinkley's copping in the media and from Port fans at the moment, I just got a feeling he's going to have them wound up to crack in hard early on. And if we can sort of withstand that and do like Brisbane did, put the score on the board and demoralise them with the scoreboard, I just think, that they'll drop their bundle. They're a young side as well. They've got a lot of young kids as well. So I think if we can withstand that early barrage and hurt them on the scoreboard, all of a sudden, they don't. It's a lot harder to be tough when you're chasing 6 or 7 goals.
Yeah, spot on. And the Lions did it really well. It was just essentially quick ball movement and a lot of pressure when they had the ball, which is pretty much our forte. So if we can make sure we've got that game on song, then there's no reason why we can't replicate what the Lions did. But I think you're spot on. They're going to come at us hard in the first and then just got to weather the storm a little bit, and then hopefully, like you said, if we can put enough scoreboard pressure on them, we could actually break them and the floodgates could open. Their form line's been interesting, Port Adelaide. It's the last month and a bit's been win-loss, 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 and this week happens to fall on the W, so we're going to have to buck the trend a little bit here, hopefully. So they're technically due for a win, but this might sound arrogant, but when I look at their 22 of last week, I just think I just don't see how they could beat us. I know that sounds strange, when
you sort of look at it, it almost is a mirror of when we played them earlier in the season. They were at pretty much full strength and had, we had, 3/4 of the side were missing almost. Yeah. And then we went over there with a siege mentality and us against the world sort of thing, and just came out and attacked the contest, attacked the game. Quieting the crowd by getting on top a bit early, and we were just able to roll with it, and then they weren't able to mount a challenge. And then this time we're the ones with a pretty much full strength list, minus one or two, and then they're coming across and Wines may be out and Evert's officially out, Burton's officially out, so they're missing a few guys. It's kind of like, you hope you don't sort of get the flip side of what happened to us.
Yeah, that's a fair call. And those outs are pretty big for them because their plays, especially Even and Wines, they've typically done a lot of damage to us in the past around the contest.
Yeah, there's bigger-bodied midfielders, which then means, a lot sort of falls onto Rockcliffe and if Powell Pepper I don't know if he's back in or coming back in. So it sort of falls under them. And Rockcliffe, for all, the possessions you get, he's not one that really hurts, in my opinion. He's great for fantasy football. He gets his 40 touches or whatever, and you think, yeah, great. But at the end of the day, when you think about it, he doesn't really hurt with what he gets. So, if our guys can get on top in the midfield, I think, it could be a bit of a buffet lunch at the G on Saturday.
I mean, the one to watch for them, as is with every game he plays, is Robbie Gray. He's probably the one that can do the most damage in multiple parts of the ground. But having those two other players out probably helps us focus a bit more attention on him if we have to. I've written down that I wouldn't mind seeing Kane Lambert go head-to-head with him. Not for Kane Lambert to fully negate him, because that's not his style, but just to keep him accountable, and then even to hurt him the other way, because Lambert's going to hurt him running towards our goal. So I wouldn't mind seeing Kane have a crack at him.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. In the midfield area, have someone like that can expose Gray the other way, and then when Gray drifts forwards, the first name that springs to mind is Mr. Dylan Grimes. Should be all Australian this year if they're being serious. Have him take Gray when he goes forwards, and just negate him when he's up forward, and then in the midfield have someone who can work off Gray and hurt him by getting forwards and hitting him on the scoreboard as well.
Charlie Dixon's the other interesting forward for them. He's not in the greatest of form, and there's even been a lot of people on the Port board putting his name down as an omission, which I find a bit surprising given their lack of probably other big forwards. But, I mean, David Asprey's going to get the job on him. I think the key with this matchup is to make sure we don't give him any early, easy shots on goal, because he seems to just really fade out of games if he doesn't get on the board early. So I think if we can, that should be a really big focus point for us.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of years ago when he sort of, I think he got hold of Rance early on, I think. I'm not 100% sure on that, but he sort of clunked a couple of marks and got himself up and going, and then that's when they were able to sort of get over the top of us. So, I think, we need to sort of have that Dave playing tight on him, but, also having the support of Vlosten and Broad coming across and getting in front and taking his space. So he can't sort of lead up and get those early marks as well, because he is a, he's not a small bloke. He is a big bloke.
He's huge, yeah.
Yeah, he's going to take a bit for Dave to sort of push him around a little bit. So he's going to need someone coming over the top and helping him out as well.
And that's where it comes down to having the right amount of midfield pressure as well. If we can't let Pal Pepper and Boak and Gray get easy ball inside 50 so he can just lead onto it. If we can put them under the pump and make them put it in the air a bit more, that's when our other defenders can obviously peel off and kill that contest.
Yeah.
And I suppose from our perspective with our two forwards, Jack and Tom, their second game back together, and I don't know, I look at Port Adelaide's defenders and it doesn't scream danger to me, if that makes sense. So they've got Cleary and Hamish Hartlett were their two key defenders last week. I just feel like if we can get the ball in there quick enough, I'm not too sure they can contain both of them for a whole game.
Oh, for the love of God, please put Hamish Hartlett on Jack Rewald.
How good would it be?
Jack would be like, it's like playing the Gold Coast again. No disrespect to Hartlett. He's a reasonably good footballer, but he's not a key defender.
No, and they're pretty much doing this out of necessity because of the people out, like what we have to do. So it's just a perfect time for us to try and exploit that now that we've got our guys back.
And if you're throwing, if Nank happens to come back and you've got Chol in the side as well, it's just going to stretch Port down back even further. Where you can have the two talls constantly down there, and then throw a third one in who just runs around. Port's defenders are going to be scratching their head going, what do we do here? So I think we can create quite a bit of, again, it comes back to the midfield. If we can win our fair share of clean ball there, we're going to give our blokes all the service all day, I think.
And you've mentioned Nank, so he's obviously down as a test and a possible inclusion for this week. If it's you, do you pull the trigger and put him in a straight spot for Soldo, or because given he's a bit of a bigger guy, do you let him play a half in the VFL first? Because Soldo's not getting pants by any stretch; he's doing all right.
I would. The only reason I would play Nank is the VFL side doesn't play until the Sunday, and then we've got the Collingwood game on the Friday night the following. So it'd be a short turnaround for Nank, even though it's only half a game. It'd still be a short turnaround from Sunday to be up and about by Friday again. So if they did pass him fit, I would put him into the AFL side, and I'd actually let Chol do a lot more of the first ruck, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then have Nank sort of play Chol's role from last week, where he only plays, say, 50% of game time, but gets those miles in the legs, gets the body ticking over a little bit, and it also just gives us that, chance to have a really good look at Chol in a big game sort of thing, because Chol's one of those guys that he frustrates the bejesus out of me when you watch him at VFL level, because when he doesn't have a lot of responsibility, he sort of floats around a little bit and doesn't get involved. But when they put that responsibility on his shoulders, he gets involved, and he's, he sort of takes it as a challenge, and he takes the challenge on, and he steps up to it. So maybe saying to him, look, you're going up against last year's premiership winning ruckman, who's carrying a niggle himself, but you put him up against him and get him to jump over him and get himself involved in the game early on, and then when Lycett gets a little bit tired, and if they use in Ryder if he's back in the side as well, you can have Nank go up against a bloke that's not going to sort of run him off his feet, so to speak, and just ease Nank back into it that way.
Yeah, I don't mind that train of thought, actually, because it's a big couple of weeks coming up if Nank comes in, because Lycett's one of the best rucks going around at the moment, and then the following week, obviously, he's going to have to compete against Grundy and Cox, so it's a fair lineup he's going to have to get through initially. So I think that reverse role might actually be not a bad idea, but if that's to take place, I'm just assuming that we just all assume it's going to be Soldo out, direct swap.
Yeah. It would be Soldo out, and Nank to come back in the ruck, but he'd be sort of playing the second ruck role this week, and just getting him eased in back into the fray.
And what about any other changes? Obviously, Josh Caddy played VFL last week and had a good game. Do you see him making his way back in for this one?
Personally, I do. I know a lot on the board are like, he was horribly out of form when he did go out. But I think Caddy is another one who, to me, is a complementary player, in that he complements either our forward half as an extra marking option, goal kicking option, or he complements our stars in the midfield. So if you put him into the midfield and he's in there with the likes of Cochin and Dusty and Prestia, where he's not getting the first off, he's not getting one of the better opposition midfielders to play on. I think he can go in there and be that extra big body midfielder, that we sort of lack at times. I think at times we are a little bit too small. So I would say he probably could come back in, and it'd be unfortunate, but the Egg would probably have to make way for that to happen.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only other move that it could be for the Egg. I don't think there's any other players set to come back in just yet. I know Pickett's listed as 1 to 2 weeks away, so it's going to be interesting to see if we chuck him into the mix when he's ready to go as well. Yeah,
I'd say he's probably at the more unlikely option than likely. At this stage of the year, just having to pick up structures and game plans, especially heading into the business end of the season, which is a bit of a shame for him. It would have been great if he didn't break his finger early on and he could have, had 4 or 5 games under his belt coming in. So I think he's probably a bit of an unlikely one at this stage.
And the other ones listed on the injury list is Noah Bolter is on a test for his quad, and Liam Baker is got a hip injury, and that's down as a test as well. So I would assume that if they both get up, they're both probably going to play VFL, but still very handy options waiting in the wings to come back in if required.
Yeah, the other one that's an interesting one is Jack Graham. Got omitted for Jack to come back, so probably drew the short straw there. But then didn't play in the VFL, so was obviously the holdover for the AFL game. Do they bring him back in as well and give us that? Instead of Caddy, do they bring Jack Graham back in, who was effectively the last to go out before last week? So. He's another one that could come back in, and he gives us that big body around the ball, a bit more defensively accountable than Caddy is. So someone you could sit on a Boak or even you were saying before, like a Robbie Gray or something, someone just to run with them and be that accountable player for them.
Yeah, it's good to have those options there. Shit time to be a selector with plenty of headaches on their table. At least it's for a good reason this time, not like earlier on in the year.
Yeah, at the start of the year, everyone was screaming about, well, who do we pick because there's no one left? And now it's who do we flick because everyone's ready? So
no, I'd much rather this headache than the other one.
Yes, much better situation for us.
All right, before we let you go, we'll get a tip from you, including margin for this game.
I think, as we discussed earlier, I think it's going to be a bit of a very tight, early, hard at it contest. I think if we can get on top and get our run and carry going, I think in the end we probably walk away 5 to 6 goal win. But in saying that, I wouldn't be at all shocked. If at the end of the day Port happened to walk away with a 1 or 2 goal win either. It's one of those games where, because of Port's form, you don't know which Port's going to turn up. the good port or, the bad port. So hopefully it's the bad port again, and we get to just march on again.
Yeah, that's a good call. I reckon the Tigers by 25 points. I think I agree with you. There's going to be pretty hard hitting in the first half, but I just can't see how their defenders are going to stop us from scoring a decent score. And I kind of feel like our midfield should be good enough to go head-to-head and not give them easy ball inside their forward 50. But like you said, you just don't know what port's going to come out, so we could both be well off the mark there. But hopefully we can get another win and make a real sneaky charge for a top 4 spot.
Yeah, and then it sets up the massive one on Friday next week.
If results fall our way. So if we beat Port and GWS beat Collingwood, which you would like to think they'll bounce back, and Collingwood have got a lot of outs as well now, #Pies have injuries.
Yes.
So if both those results happen, then next Friday night we're playing for 4th spot, which adds a whole lot of spice to it.
Oh, they'll be hanging off the rafters for that one as well.
Absolutely. And a reminder, the game this week is on Saturday, July 20th at 1:45pm at the MCG. So just for you Port Adelaide fans who might be listening, you have to get onto a plane this round to actually come and play us. You can't just drive down the road to Adelaide Oval. So we'll make sure there's people at the airport who can guide you to some hotels and to the MCG, because it may not be a familiar area for you. RT, thanks so much for coming on, mate. Really appreciate your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Michaels.
No dramas. Until next time, go Tigers. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Richmond BigFooty Tigercast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and YouTube so you can follow all the roast and toast, the reviews and previews, and all topics Richmond. Also keep an ear out for our special episodes of interviews with past players. Go Tigers.